3, 2, 1.
All right. That's a new way to get rolling. We got the clap going.
Yeah.
We're in a new studio. This is the nicest studio we've ever been in. Ours is a little bit, it's a homey one. We have a little kitchenette and everything because it's his house. But this is awesome to be here in the Mastery Labs with Dr. Michael Gervais. Thank you so much for giving us the time today.
Stoked to be here with you guys. Yeah, cool.
Second time guest.
Second time.
Yeah.
In your studio, it was cool. Like, so I mean, this is nice. It's professional in that way, but like you've got the right vibe for you guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
It's fun to go around and see what other professional podcasters do. Because when you were sending that email over there, I was like, what cameras are those? What's the setup back here? What notes can we take? And just to see how we can always improve what we're doing.
Yeah,
it's fun.
There's no secrets. Like we're happy to give you that list or behind the tour. There are some things that do make it easier. And so having those tools is definitely a good investment.
How many years have you been doing the Finding Mastery?
I think we're on 8. I think this is 8.
Awesome.
Yeah, potentially we might have slid into 9, but yeah.
When you started it, did you have any expectations of where you wanted it to go, how far you wanted it to go? Because for us, we started it because he was sort of bored and sick with an autoimmune disease, and now we're on year 7. We're now known as the podcast guys. Like he's not even known as the Olympian.
Yeah.
Seriously?
I definitely it's more for volleyball when people come up to me, but yeah, like totally. People come up all the time just about the podcast or with our books.
Yeah.
Overseas, like having a signed book. I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Also, I have to like tell them like, I know I'm an author, but like Travis is an actual author who writes. So like, don't give me too much credit.
Yeah, right. That's so good. No, the first year, the original idea was the stories and the life experiences that people have shared with me as a sports psychologist are incredible. And it always felt like we were trapping magic inside the room that we're having the conversations in. And I to date have not had an athlete on the podcast that I've worked with. And to be very clear that my relationship with you is professional. It's not about the podcast or sharing your story, but the stories are so amazing of what people go through, what they deal with, the baggage that they're carrying, the weight that they feel on their shoulders, the ambitions, the unreasonableness to design their life a certain way. And that's so inspiring that I just wanted to celebrate people that go for it. Yeah. And that's how we started. And so it was friends of friends, and that's how it started. And then 8 or 9 years later, here we are. Yeah, so it's cool.
It's so fun. And then you have a book.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So I know you did an Audible book with Pete Carroll.
That's right. Head
but
coach of the Seahawks.
Was that ever in print?
No, we have the rights to put it in print.
Okay.
And there was just something really nice and pure about the audio form, and we never converted it. So this is the first. Technically, that's not a book. It's called an Audible original.
Okay.
Not a book. It's a weird thing. So technically, this is my first book.
Okay. Congratulations. Their books are mighty undertakings.
Aren't they though?
Huge.
Like, I know you know. Like it's really hard. You know. And I'm not a writer. So
you wouldn't know it.
Yeah, you
did a great job masking that.
Kevin Lake, who's helped with the book, he's on the cover as well. He took that raw clay and was able to stitch these loosely thread ideas together in a way that the reader could go, oh, this isn't as clunky as Gervais talking. So. But
it originally, if I'm not mistaken, was based off of an article you wrote that you got a lot of good feedback off of. Right?
So I wrote it's like a 2 or 3 page article for Harvard Business Review. And 12 months later, they rang me up and they said, hey, you touched a nerve. That article was the #1 downloaded article every month for the last 12 months.
Wow.
Let's go.
Wow.
And I thought, okay, that's cool. So it's not just me with this. This is really about something I grew up with, was overwhelmed by, which is the fear of people's opinions. And I can explain all that in a bit. But then when I was working with Best in the World across multiple sports, it kept showing up as well. There was no name for it. But it was, I don't want to let people down. I don't want to look stupid. Like, Like going forward's hard for A, B, and C reasons, and that we are social beings, and we are biologically wired to fit in. And so belonging is safety. Being pushed out of the belonging is very, very dangerous to our existence, if you will. And so those intrepid elite performers that are really going for it out on the edge, part of their biology is, if they're healthy, this book is not for the narcissists and the sociopaths, and it's not for them. Right? But if you're really healthy, you're aware that rejection is a near-death sentence some 200,000 years ago. It is not now.
Right.
So we've got this ancient brain in modern times. Now rejection actually can point you to something that is a tribe that's closer to what you believe in or want to be part of.
Right.
But 200,000 years ago, rejection meant, like if the three of us were in the tribe, whatever tribe it is, and let's say that they trusted us to go gather something or chop some wood or hunt or whatever it might have been, and we blow it. And the elders pull us aside and they say, all right, you three, we trusted you. You came back with broken arrows. Our tribe now is hungry. We're going to give you one more shot, but you better perform at the right level now. We're really counting on you. So we're like, okay. And we go out and say we come back and we blow it again, or we come back with very few bounty, They might just say, look, they might just ostracize us. They might just kind of marginalize us. They might even push us right out. And it's too much to fend and forge and fight and hunt and gather and take care of each other. Just the three of us?
Yeah.
I mean, you guys, I feel sorry if you're having a bet on me out there.
We got no females. Having no females alone might be a problem.
That might be a problem too, right? And so that's why our brains are so tuned to checking in with others. Am I okay? And if we're not careful, the brain is so powerful that it will win. But to live the good life, that part of the brain can't drive the whole system. So the good life has to do with some freedom and some joy and some sense of like being you and your very best at the risk of looking stupid, falling down, letting people down, blowing it, failure, mistakes.
Right.
And we say often in business and in sport, listen, failure's the greatest teacher. Fail fast, fail forward, fail often, learn from your mistakes, blah, blah, blah. That's intellectual. Your brain and your emotional system is saying, yeah, no, don't buy any of that. Because if you keep blowing it, they're going to look at you a certain way. And if they keep looking at you that way, you're probably going to get kicked out.
Right.
And that is our emotions and our biology and our hardwiring, if we're not careful, I'll say it again, runs the show. And that's why I just want to ring the bell to say your brain doesn't have to run the whole thing. You've got this other part of you, your mind. So the mind is the software, the brain is the hardware, oversimplifying a very complex, thing.
I like that separation though.
Yeah, it's good for like trying to understand it, but they're not really separated. I like it too because it can give us a way to talk about it.
Right.
However, we believe right now that mind and brain is fully enmeshed, and it's called embedded cognition. But Descartes pulled the two apart, and said, "Hey, there's a brain and a mind, and let's." And it's a good mechanism to talk about them. And the brain is the hardware, the mind is the software. My software was as patchy and buggy and holy as you could imagine. Like growing up with my knucklehead friends and the way my parenting, my parents and family and neighborhood, I needed a lot of work on my mind. My brain was good, but my software was patchy. And so I had to invest in it to be okay in life. And then I found such power in it that I kept studying it.
Where did you start working on that software? And how did you even identify that you needed to work on that software? Because when you started, that was really at a time when mindfulness, psychology, that was kind of like quack science, not that long ago. We're sort of in this modern day revolution where we're understanding the power of mindfulness. But when you got onto that, you were way ahead of your time.
Yes and no. I think that I think it's always been part of the pursuing of excellence or mastery or high performance. It's always been there. Like if we went back, so my first beginnings was in 1985.
Okay.
And I was a young kid surfing. And there's two types of surfing, as you guys know. There's core surfing and competitive surfing. Core surfing is like just put yourself in the pit, in the spot, and don't talk about it. And if you talk about it, you're kind of a kook. Just like live it, know it. So there's a purity to it.
There's always that friend in the group who paddles back out and he's like, "Hey, bro, how'd that turn look? Did I throw lots of spray?" You're like, "Bro, we don't care. Shut up."
Yeah, right, exactly.
But we all kind of want to look cool on the wave at the same time.
100%, right? And so that's that core surfing. And then competitive surfing is there's a bunch of people on the beach judging and critiquing and and so I couldn't translate the two. I could do the core thing because there was like no one judging and it wasn't cool to even talk about it. So there's safety in that.
Right.
Danger potentially sometimes in a wave of consequence, but safety in the emotional piece to it. Okay. And then as soon as I would try to competitively surf, I was 15 and this guy paddles by me. It's beautiful conditions. It's right here locally. It was about 6-foot waves, 3 of us out, 7:30 in the morning, something like that. And this guy paddles by me and he goes, "Gervais, I surf with you every day out here. You got to stop worrying about all the things that could go wrong." And I've told this story enough, but it's like, that's where it happened, where I said, "Oh shit, how does he know? How did he know that, oh shit, I didn't even know that all I'm thinking about is like slipping on the downturn, missing the da-da-da-da." Like the whole thing was a disaster, that the movie that I was playing. And so he paddled off. He did not, like a good competitor, he didn't tell me what to do.
Right.
He just basically pointed out that I was a mess. And so I said, okay. So what's a better way to start thinking? And so I just flipped that around and thought, well, let me think about what I do want to have happen. It sounds so simple, doesn't it? Yeah. But as a 15-year-old kid, it's like, oh, there's something I can do. And
the match in the forest fire.
That's it.
The forest fire, right? Kind of lit the match.
It lit the match. And I didn't know it at the time. But in that moment, I was like, whoa, my surfing just got better. What I didn't know is that there was a discipline of psychology. I didn't know there was a sub-discipline that was just emerging called sports psychology. But if we were all around that neighborhood and that type of experience and we asked our elders how important is the mental part of surfing or volleyball or football or whatever, the ones that know would say, oh, yeah. At this level, if it's a high level,
right.
At this level, everyone's got the physical, everyone's got the technical. But the ones that have the mental, those are the ones that really do something special. Mm-hmm. So it's always been there. Mm-hmm. But there was a taboo around it. We still have some taboo. It's still there, but it's way better, isn't it?
Yeah, that taboo is eroding in a hurry, I think.
Yeah, I love that word. That's a really good word. Yeah, it really is. And so it takes folks like you, the cool kids, to say, get over it.
Yeah.
The mental part of being great at anything is really important. So what do you mean you're not working on it? Like, really, what do you mean?
Yeah, 100%.
But 25 years ago, you raise your hand like, hey, how do I work on my confidence? And the people around you be like, oh, we got a weak one coming.
Yeah, great.
Like, let me tell you, I'm going to sit right next to you in the lineup, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you can't figure it out, maybe you don't belong.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like there was, now we know confidence is trainable.
Yeah.
How about that? Confidence is trainable.
I like that.
Isn't that? And it's not hard.
Mm-hmm. I had a similar moment in my life or my career as well. It was just like one game in high school where I remember I decided, because I just been obsessed. I love professional athletes, sports. Those are my heroes growing up. Like anyone, Jerry Rice, Brett Favre, all those guys. And I had one game where I was like, I'm gonna play my best game ever. And to me, that meant just going harder. I'm gonna prepare, I'm going to warm up hard. I'm just going to play my best game. I decided it. And it was my worst game ever. And I was just like, what just happened? I tried harder. I did everything harder and more, and it backfired. That kind of sparked it for me, being like, what just happened? Like, and I think I remember
had the right thoughts.
My coach
Yeah.
at some point being, try. He's like giving everyone their direct, whatever they're doing right or wrong. Try, stop thinking. And that was it. I was like, stop thinking. And, you know, like that kind of, I feel like from there, I always like was in the back of my mind, like, okay, where's my head at? I don't want to play that. I don't want to do that thing again where I get lost or whatever, you know? And I kind of did it on my own through college, and really like, I didn't start studying or listening or reading books until around then. Like inner game of tennis was introduced to me around the end of college.
What years is this?
2011, I graduated. And then I remember reading Agassi's book Open when I went and played in Turkey overseas in 2012, and just like picking up all the books from there. And then soon after, your podcast actually came on. I found your podcast because I remember you spoke at SC at some point to the boys who were after me, and then they told me about your story. I was like, who's this guy?
Oh, wow, that's crazy.
And I heard about the pod, and I was like...
Did they tell you I walked out?
Of the
at
speech?
SC. Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, my
Maybe.
God. Yeah, so Bill Ferguson says, hey, you know, come on in, and like, so that was a coach.
Yes,
right?
that was my coach. Yes.
Oh, Bill was your coach?
Yeah.
So we must have just missed each other.
Yeah, I think you came in like the year after maybe or something, like 12.
Okay, wait, you already graduated?
I graduated 2011.
Yeah, okay, so it was 1 or 2 years.
And then the guys, the previous year, I was talking with them, and they said that you had come in.
It was like, I couldn't believe what I was feeling. So I'm coming in, I'm like, oh, you guys, I think they won or were...
They were runner-up, I think.
Runner-up,
right?
yeah. And so the chomping at the bit, all the talent is there, and it felt like that was maybe an underperformance. You know, like the raw clay was all there.
Right.
Okay. So Bill says, hey, come on in. I think it was the year, I think we had just won the Super Bowl.
Okay.
And so it was really palpable what a culture that is great feels like. Our culture at the Seattle Seahawks was during our first year was unbelievable.
Yeah.
It was so connected.
Pete actually had that book, Compete, I think it was called, right? Around that time. I remember reading it around then.
So that was our shared book, Compete to Create.
Yeah, that was shared.
That was our shared book.
Compete to Create.
Compete to Create was our audio. That was the audio original.
What was his one before that?
So he had one called Win Forever.
Oh, it was
and that was his print book.
That was the one I read, yeah.
Yeah. And so I come in, I'm like, okay, so it was going to be like a season-long type of engagement, infrequent, but at least an engagement. And I asked, I was sharing some things and just kind of getting going. One of my rules when I speak to a team or in any way is that I'm very clear that I need to give something before I ask for something.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to get into an exchange and a conversation more than like just a one-way thing. And so I was giving of myself in a way that I was wanting to be in it, and I was sharing some of my approach and my journey and some of my scar tissues. And then so I paused and I asked a question, and it was crickets. Okay, sometimes that happens, no problem. So I adjust a little bit, and I ask another question. It was crickets. I was like, oh, maybe I'm really off. So I go internal first. I'm like, maybe I'm like, that's weird. Mm-hmm. So I share something else, and then I kind of pivot over to a new kind of topic, and I ask another question. And like I'm looking at 20-some.
Yeah.
How many athletes are on the team? 20-some?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. 20.
18? I don't know. Yeah, something like that.
I forget. I've been on the beach for a while.
Yeah, right. And there's like, they're just kind of slouched, reclining, like not interested at all.
Yeah.
And I looked over at Coach and I was like, Bill, there's nothing here for me. And he goes, what? And I said, and I looked back to the team and I was like, guys, like out of all due respect, you know, you are one of the best programs in the league. I think you know it all. I think you know exactly what it takes to win, and you don't need me because there's zero energy in this room. And I've made a promise to myself that I'll never work harder for an athlete's well-being and high performance than they're willing to work. So I'm feeling that right now.
Yeah.
I wish you guys all the best. And Bill was like, oh shit.
You know, like, he's like, I should ask questions.
Yeah. No. Bill was on it. I think he knew.
Yeah. Got it.
I think he knew that there was a thing happening there.
Huh.
And do you know what happened Like, how did they do
that year?
Yeah.
They lost in the national championship in Galen Center.
Was that in 2013-14?
No. Oh, that was 2012, the year after I left, when they still had Tony Torelli.
Yeah.
And Micah Christensen, who's our indoor national team setter.
Yeah.
Still to this day was a freshman. So they went to
he would have been there. Yeah.
And then they lost to Irvine, I think, in the national championship in Galen. But they weren't expected to be there. Not really, because they lost my recruiting class, which we were stacked.
Yeah, got it.
And we had choked the year before.
Oh, you did?
To be quite honest. Yeah, we were number one all year. We had like 2 losses maybe going into the Final Four, and we lost to Santa Barbara in the conference finals and the Final Four. But it's another like moment in my mind that stood out because I was kind of focusing on myself a lot and like staying in my zone because I knew I had a good feeling of where I played best in my own head, and I didn't have to worry about the team because I was a little bit more of a role player. And in that match, the Final Four one, everything fell apart. The whole team fell apart, but I had my best match ever.
Oh, wow.
And that's happened multiple times, but I remember it just being like, just stay here, try. You know, just stay here.
Right.
And at one point, Riley came to me. He's like, "Bro, I don't know what to do. I'm going to set you." I was like, "Okay."
Yeah,
and I was just like,
that?
"I'm not going to leave."
That part, yeah.
I see the storm happening around me. I'm like, "I'm not going to leave. Just stay here." And so I like had my career high in kills, and like still ended up losing because they just didn't have the team, gelling. But
yeah,
that actually stands out as another moment that was like learning for me. Like, oh wow, like. As long as I stay here, like I get to control like where my head's at and all that.
Yeah, once you start knowing the dials, it becomes so much easier, to be able to play in that type of space, that zone. As we sometimes talk about, like once you know what the dials are for you and how sensitive the dials are, or how blunt they are sometimes, like you can just play with those dials to stay in that place.
Yeah.
And early on, it feels like, oh, I'm here. Okay, don't fuck it up or whatever. And then then you're out, right?
Yeah.
But like once you start to play and practice with those dials, you find that you slip into that space more often. Yeah. But it's not on command.
Right.
It's not on demand. It doesn't work that way.
No.
We need to be able to position ourselves for this on purpose accident to happen. Like you're trying to create the accident of slipping into that space.
Right.
But if you can just be there in the precondition, which is a very agitating place.
Yeah.
If you can be there long enough, slip in. And in that agitating precondition, you're still in a really good performance zone, but it's not that zone.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it. It's like you're trying to be like right at that middle baseline and like that you're a wave, So it's like it's gonna be big and small. Like every once in a while, like you'll like link up with it.
Is that how? That's the imagery you use. Yeah, that's cool.
Imagery, but
yeah,
it is funny to think of it like you always feel like you're like error correcting. It's like steering a canoe.
Yeah,
it's very hard to. It's the best steersmen know when to start correcting before you get to where you're aiming where you want to go. I guess sailing's probably similar, but like you can't overcorrect too much. Or like you're like, oh, I need to go even further left, and then you go too far and you spin out.
That's it.
It's like it is interesting that you're trying to like, what did you say, like error into doing it,
like error
on purpose.
What did I say? Purpose. What did I say?
It's like you were kind of waiting for this accident on purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. Yeah, and on purpose.
Trippy.
Yeah, like it because you slip into it.
Yeah, and you don't get to choose when you.
That's right.
When you're there.
That's exactly it. But you can manipulate all of the right dials, like self-talk, breathing. You can do all of that framing of like the challenge. The framing of the challenge is actually the biggest one. So
awareness, right? Like that's where the awareness.
You need awareness first for anything.
Right.
So that's one of mindfulness being one of those tools. The whole thing starts with awareness. That's ground zero.
Right.
Without awareness of how you're doing on the inside, or how awareness of how the external world is doing its thing,
right,
we're always kind of a half step late, But so it starts with awareness, and then like I'll be dramatic for a minute. If I don't know how thought 1 and thought 2 work together to create emotion A or B, like I'm just playing this downstream game of only looking at the tangible, which is my performance or my behavior, and I'm missing the feelings and thoughts part of it. I'm always working downstream. So if you want, I'm using your canoeing, going upstream is way more powerful. And so if you can understand, so that the basic science is thoughts and emotions, let me be more precise, thoughts and feelings and emotions, those 3 together impact your behaviors. Those 4 together impact your performance. So if you're only looking at behaviors and performance, like where are my elbows or, how's my footwork, it's good. We need it.
Right.
That's the bottom-up approach. But if it's only a bottom-up approach and not a top-down, meaning awareness of your thoughts and feelings and how to work with those, it's only part of the equation. So that's when you get the top, the bottom-up and the top-down working together is kind of you, the person, is at the seat of those controls. And a coach can only observe the observable, which is like the movement stuff, right?
Right.
And then we all, coach or psychologist, need to ask, so tell me about what you are feeling. Tell me about the thoughts that you're going into this. And there's a long narrative of kind of how the physical and non-physical 2 worlds work together, mental and physical, to say the way that you're framing something, and framing is just like you put a frame around a picture, like how are you capturing the challenge ahead of you? If you go, fucking right, they're good. Let's fucking bring it.
Yeah.
Or if you're going, oh man, I think he's got a step on me. Like I think he kind of knows that my left side, and like, I hope they don't pick on me on this. Like,
whatever you think, you're right, kind of thing,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. But the way you frame it, if you're seeing it as a challenge, let's go get it. Or if you're seeing it as like, man, I don't want to blow this thing. This feels a little too big.
Right.
Just that simple little thing changes your entire psychology.
Right.
That's where I loved an example in the book that comes to mind is with the 3 golfers, Ricky Fowler being the pro, and then you had the club pro, sort of, and then you have your amateur. And Ricky Fowler, once they bring the camera out, the club pro, he gets a little stressed. And Ricky's like, I've seen cameras before, and the other guy's like, oh, this sounds kind of fun. You got a camera, watch me putt.
Yeah, right. The
but I
amateur is like,
what,
whatever.
Yeah.
But Ricky, he makes, I think, 15 out of 18. I think that one. And when, I forget, were you talking to him or were you researching this? Okay.
No, I asked him
and he said, I hit 17 good putts.
That's right.
And you were like, oh, you made 15. He goes, yeah, well, I hit 17 good putts. 2 of them just didn't go in. So he had that top down where mentally he was very satisfied with the putts he made. They just didn't happen to drop, and he wasn't going to beat himself up if it lipped out.
Isn't that cool?
It was. I love that. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah. There's a similar, it's a little folklore in my mind just because I don't know Bodie Miller, and one of the great downhillers in snow.
His wife played beach volleyball, actually.
Is that right?
Yeah. He used to be on tour. I mean, he was in the players' tent a lot.
He was. Yeah. So maybe find
like
a way
good
to ask him, if this is true or not. One of my good friends is on the science team for the team, so I heard it second or third hand. But this idea that in one of his last games, and he never medaled at the Olympics, but he does his thing because he always puts it on edge and like really goes for it. And he wants an honest run, not just a run to medal, according to the narrative I've received here. And he gets to the bottom, slides in, big snow kind of cloud. That moment, the bells and the horns and all that stuff is going, and he takes a moment, and he kind of like runs a few corners in his mind, and he's nodding his head like, yeah, I honestly put both of those corners or whatever the corners were on edge. Like, yeah, that's a good run. And then he looks up at the board and he's in first place, and he's like, yeah, all right. So that idea that you use an honest calibration first for maybe for you, like, did I make game point, podium moment or not? Say you're, for first or for fourth, something like that. Those 2 different games. By the way, the playing for third is heavy.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Right? Okay, let's
sure.
choose that one for a minute. And so, and let's say you are, let's say you're down by 2, okay, and it's almost going to be closed out, but you're serving. Did you make an honest contact on your serve?
Right.
Or did you just float it over? Only you kind of know. Mm-hmm. You know, the rest of us might, but there could be a wind adjustment that happened that you had to adjust for that. And, you know, but did you really honestly go for it and find that window to make an honest contact, to put it close to the tape or whatever the only we really know.
Yeah.
And that type of internal calibration of honesty is a prerequisite to be on the path of mastery. Mm-hmm. And the path of mastery is very different than the path of high performance. Very different than the path of excellence. Those are more metallic and they're more pedestrian to me. Mm. But the path of mastery, there's a contour and a warmth and there's an honesty that is different. Not that you don't have honesty in those other two, but there's a different foundation for the path of mastery.
Is mastery all internal?
No. I love the question. I think it's multidimensional, mastery of self and mastery of craft. Mm. So the craft is mostly external.
Right. Gotcha.
Yeah, and then self is mostly internal. The interesting thing about, in both self and craft, there's internal and external. And I'll explain this. Like mastery of self, it'd be fun to hear what you guys think about like what that is before I ramble even further. But the emotions that we have, so we have thoughts and feelings and emotions. Okay. So emotions are observable and they are public. Mm-hmm. And they are concrete and you can measure them and other people can see them. So if my hands start to rattle, if my breathing rate changes, if my heart is pounding and my skin is flush and my pupils dilate, okay, that's an activation. That's an emotion. And you can observe it. And sometimes if I'm having all of those, I don't want you to see it. Mm-hmm. That's like the double thing that's happening, right? But the way that I'm interpreting that is private. And that's the world of feelings. So emotions are observable, feelings are private.
I like that.
Yep. And so I can see your emotions, but I need to ask you about your feelings. And we go, are we talking about feelings? Hell yeah. That's the whole neurochemistry thing. The interpretation of that is really the content of your inner life. Yes, thoughts, but the way you're thinking is creating an emotional and feeling response. And so that's really, to me, where the good stuff is. And so mostly internal for mastery of self, but there is, of course, an external component via emotions.
And I think when you have that sort of mastery of self where you are close to it, I think when you're able to hit that honest serve down 19-20, and even if you hit it out, that it's not as haunting. Whereas if you just hit a muffin and you have no chance on defense, because at this rate, if you
it's coming back as a kill.
I mean, there's no question about it. And I think that you will always be left wondering what happened if I would have hit my serve down the left side line that he's a killer at, instead of just playing it safe and hit the float serve, which is the most dangerous thing you can actually do.
That's right. Yeah.
That's been very apparent in my career, like the exact example you guys are talking about. I remember I was in my last indoor contract playing in Puerto Rico, where our good friend Carly Lloyd is now.
Oh yeah. What's up, Carly?
And I was back serving, and one of the veterans on the team was kind of taking care of me, like big brother guy. I came back after, I think it was match point, and then I came back to the bench after, and he's like, I learned a lot about you right there. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I always look at what people do when the game's on the line and on the service line, you know, or what they do on the service line when the game's on the line. And that like stuck with me for a long time, because every time I had the game on the line, I was like, what am I going to do? Like, I got to decide. Do I want to like fluff it, keep it in, which like I had done at points in my career before that, where it's like, I don't want to miss it, because like college or like, you know, indoors you have a coach and they have an expectation, or maybe you're the serving sub. It's like, I can't miss this. It's my one job is to keep it in. But then in that moment I was like, no, like I'm going for it in those moments. Like I decided from there on out, like I'm going.
You made it easy then.
I just made it a full-on decision from there on out. And then I remember I've used that many times. I've hit really good serves in really big moments. And then the Olympics came when I was a sub, right? I showed up late, and I'm standing there at the Olympics with the ball in my hand. First server. I'm never first server on my normal teams, but Jake was like, you're serving. I was like, got this ball with the rings on it in the stadium to start the match. And I was like, you know what to do. And it just like gave myself the full like clearance, you know, just to like go miss it if you need to, but you're going for it.
That's
like, okay,
awesome.
let's go.
Yeah.
And like that's kind of repeated itself over the years to me. And it's just like one of those things where I just had to, you make the decision, and whatever happens after that is like you can live with it because you made the decision. It wasn't that performance or the outcome that mattered. It was that you made the decision and committed to it.
I tell you, like, this is what I love about. I'm not interested in the medals, right? It's cool. Like, winning is awesome for a lot of reasons. It pays bills. It like further contracts. You get more time to do the thing if you want it. Mm-hmm. You know, you're not pushed out the back. You know, if you don't, you know, if you underperform or perform poorly. So, but the thing that I love is what you just described. But most of the time, we're enamored by the excellence of something, or the podium type of celebration. But behind the scenes, the athletes that are on the path of mastery have made a fundamental commitment. And those fundamental commitments are to be their very best and to get right to the messy edge, examine who they are in those moments, try to hold on, right? Yeah. And what that does is it pushes the edges out even further if you can stay in that messy edge a little bit longer. And then in that, you get to make some honest commitments, decisions first, and then commitments. So it's a fundamental decision and an honest commitment that is part of the path of mastery as well. And like you said it as good as I've heard anyone say it. Like, this is what I do. Because you've made the fundamental commitment to it.
Yeah.
I like that. The messy edge.
Oh, it's so messy, isn't it?
I like that, yeah.
It's so messy, yeah.
And
it's very messy.
We mentioned it earlier. Bronze medal matches are tough to get up for. And were you working?
To get up for?
And
I think that they're almost like so dangerous.
Because it's too high.
Well, it's all or nothing.
Right.
You know, like from an output standpoint.
Yeah.
Well, it depends too, right? Like if you're Kerri and Misty or April, it was gold or bust. Whereas like if I were to get to that Olympic gold medal, it'd be like bronze would be my gold too. Like I want to get one of them. Like any of them would be great.
Yeah.
But that's the image that I was thinking of, because I remember talking with Kerri and April about them playing for bronze. And April said it really wasn't until we were down 12-9 in the second set that we were like, we got to stop feeling sorry for ourselves. Like, we can still medal at the Olympic Games. It's not going to be gold, but they're 9 points away from us having no medal. And then April they kind of found that next level.
Yep.
But I'm curious, were you working with them? And that was Rio?
That was Rio, yeah.
What, and you can reveal as much as you want, I mean, what did that conversation look like? Because that's a quick turnaround from losing in the semifinals to then playing for bronze. And there's a lot, it's a mess, I'm sure, going on up there.
Yeah, I mean, without details being, you know, like, and I would never share the locker room conversations like that would happen. But in general, as a theme, to be able to go from fully expecting and being positioned well to be gold, you know, potentially silver. They were almost expected as good as they were. And then to have a bit of a shocker and then find themselves in like fighting for that turn, you're nailing it. Like what you're going through is a bit of a grief process, a death of a dream, and doing it in a fast cycle.
Right.
Now, if we could play this back and create an alternate version of it, if you do not care about the outcome, it's not hard.
Right.
This is not hard. If you are committed to the path of unlocking and being in the messy edge and figuring out and looking for like how to express your talent at the highest level as consistently as you can, now you got another chance. But we're human. And the outcome is electric. Okay. And so it makes it harder when you really care about the outcome. I know from a science perspective what happens to the brain when you can let go of the outcome and be fully present. I know from an emotional and a psychological standpoint, it is so much easier when you can treat the outcome as noise and the signal is the task at hand, and just make a fundamental commitment to that, similar to your story. But that's very, very hard to do. And even the smartest of us will say, yeah, I got it. But then why is there grief? Why is there trauma?
Right.
Why are we upset?
Right.
Right? Because we really do care about the outcome. And so I think it's a earnest challenge that is difficult to do, to intellectually understand, to let go of the outcome, get to the signal, meaning attending fully in the present moment. But then when you don't get the outcome, like, you ought to be okay, right? It's not the case for...
How cool is that?
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because we were talking about Kent Steffes earlier, and him and Karch Karai were the heavy favorites to win the 96 gold medal. And there was a lot of political rivalries going on with St. John Smith and his partner, Carl Henkel. And everyone was saying that St. John and Carl didn't deserve to be there in 96. They played each other in the quarterfinals. And all of a sudden, Carl, who was in law school as a clerk, he'd been playing four-man. They're up 12-8 over Karch and Kent in an old school side-out match to 15. And Kent was like, we were doing everything we could. And he's stressing out. He's getting tense. And then he said, finally, out of the timeout, I just looked up at the stadium. And I thought, what a beautiful day to be playing beach volleyball. We have 10,000 people packing the stands. People are going nuts. American flags everywhere. What an opportunity. And he said once, he called it the shift.
Who is this?
Kent Steffes.
Kent, yeah. And
he said once I made that shift, everything started changing. And it's not that they went to this superhuman level and St. John and Carl played worse, but he said that he just sort of let it go a little bit, and they ended up winning, I think, 17-15 in what's regarded by a lot of people. It's called the match of the century, right, as one of the greatest matches of all time. But it's interesting to see how Kent had that same shift, and 20 years later, exactly, April Ross had that same shift in the bronze medal match. And once you just get that letting go, which is almost impossible at that highest level, right? Then you let it go and get one of the best results. And Kerri still calls that bronze medal one of her favorite achievements because of the sheer difficulty of bouncing back from something that had never happened to her. She'd never lost an Olympic match in her life. You got to respond and win.
I know.
How crazy is that April, like, in terms of a career experience, let's just say for Olympics, she got to experience going to a gold medal match and losing, going to the semis, losing, and then going to the bronze and having to win it, and then going to the gold and winning it.
Yeah,
at the end, that was the cherry on the top. Yeah, which is pretty cool. Like, in terms of just her perseverance. And,
Very.
And then she got to end it right off into the sunset kind of thing. Not that she's done.
No, she's
Come
gnarly.
back, April.
Yeah, I loved working with. I got to work with Kerri and Misty, and Kerri and April, and they're like, Kerri's awesome, and then Misty and April. Oh my God, are they forces? like you just think about those combinations of those temperaments and the physicality of both Kerri and each partner there.
Yep.
You know, it's cool.
Those three alone, like, if I just took volleyball players, not men or women, based on who I've been around and what I've seen, those are probably the top three that I look at to, like, kind of, they set the bar.
That's
in
really
terms
cool.
Of, like,
physicality
no offense
or
to the guys,
psychological?
but I don't know if one of those guys would make my top three.
Wow.
More psychological, competitive. The game too, for sure. Certain pieces of it that I would just love to steal from any of them.
I mean, the way Misty could read
what was
happening.
I want to walk into digs like Misty. Like, why do they keep shooting it to her?
It's actually cross-court rips. You know, yeah. Which the way that, so one of her genius abilities is deep focus. And so she's watching a different game. And so definitely that I'm watching, but maybe most, even yourself included, because she's got such deep focus over such long period of time that she's watching the frames in between the frames. And I'm just seeing the frame.
Right.
You know, frame 1, frame 2, frame 3. You're doing like frame 1, 1.4, 1.6, 1.8. And she's like 1.1, 1.2.
Right.
She's seeing all these little bits of novel information to predict something that is happening.
Yeah.
But I can't.
And some of us will be like,
yeah,
3
right.
moves before, and she's just standing there, and she's just like,
Oh,
I'm gonna
there
go
it
this
is.
way.
Yeah.
And you're like, damn. It's like
Because-
Kyrie Irving going down the lane where he like, how does he? It looks like he's walking, but he's in a full sprint, and he just, guys like that where it's just like, they look like they're walking versus another basketball player. It's like,
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. It was one of my favorite things to watch, just
Yeah.
from the how she was able to be that much of a butterfly, and like it was rad.
Yeah,
Rad.
that's actually what I was picturing when I was saying that.
Yeah.
Like a few things I'd like to steal. It's like Misty's just like calm and just efficient and moving everywhere, just like with ease.
And a force to be reckoned.
And,
Yeah. Very hard to move any of them off a block.
It wasn't like,
Like,
I'm
and I don't
following.
mean physically the block, but like
Right.
to hip check them emotionally, psychologically, physically. It's like
They kind of had
they're
a Kobe
sturdy.
Shaq vibe.
Yeah, they're really
Misty and
sturdy in
Kerri.
that way.
Yeah.
Right? Like where it wasn't one like, oh, Misty, like stay behind the beast, Kerri, and like let her,
Yeah.
And it wasn't the other one like, I'm always follow you. It was like these two alphas, and like we got to make it work together however we can. Kind of felt like that, at least
cool.
from my perspective.
I learned a lot from them. Yeah, it was a great part of my life.
I'm curious how much, because have you read Range?
I have.
I love that book.
Yeah.
And of course, after I read it, I started noticing it a lot in my life, because I've just been sort of a dilettante in a lot of things. I played probably 6 or 7 sports growing up. And when I started playing beach volleyball, I started seeing the basketball skills pop up here, and the baseball and the swimming and the golf and all this. And then with beach volleyball, I play, write, podcast, coach, commentate, and I think everything sort of helps one another. You work with athletes and not just athletes, high performers across the whole spectrum. And you mentioned that you learned a lot from Kerri and Misty, but how much are you able to pull from a guy who's jumping out of a spaceship and volleyball and snowboarding and skiing? I feel like you've just been able to, like, you can take something you learned from volleyball and apply it to Ricky Fowler.
Yeah, I think so. It's the, I don't know, I guess I'm about 25 years into this science and art, and it keeps getting more interesting to me because of the different varied experiences that I'm included in. And I feel so honored to be included in them. But the commonalities are striking. And so I spent 2 years working in an F1 with an F1 team.
Okay.
Which is nothing like you would imagine from American football.
Right.
Okay. So, however, in F1, you've got one of the gnarliest risk takers on the planet, the driver, and some of the brightest minds in the world that are risk adverse, trying to communicate how to solve something. Okay. So that's really what's happening.
Whoa.
Is the whole thing, in my mind, and this is not a knock on all of the engineering that goes into make the car, but post practices that the athlete is trying to convey from their ass and their hands and their ears and their eyes what it is that they're feeling while ripping around at 200 plus to 40 miles an hour, like that sensation, to somebody that has never really ever felt that.
Right.
And so you've got these linear logical kind of in one camp, and then one person that is responsible to try to communicate their own experience inside the confines of the language of the engineer. And that tension is rad. So how does that show up in football? Well, you've got coaches that are trying to understand what's actually happening in the messiness of the play, and are trying to either observe from up top, be on the sidelines, but you've got to gather information from the athletes. And it's the gathering of information to try to synthesize, to try to make sense, to play it back. They're teammates, right? To play it back, coach and athlete, to play it back. And the coaches that aren't inquisitive miss so much information. But the coaches, when an athlete, like if you're the athlete or you're the coach and I'm the athlete coming off the sidelines, the best coaches in my mind are say like, what are you seeing out there? Well, this is breaking over here, or I don't see anything. It's messy. I can't figure it out. And so there's that combination between of both partners to try to solve something that is very difficult to solve. Mm-hmm. It is both tangible and invisible. That I never would have been able to articulate it that way because I would have thought it was more about the craft. But to me, it's more about the relationship. And the relationship is what cuts across every sport. And it first begins with the relationship with yourself, and then with others, then with experience itself, and then with Mother Nature, and eventually we're going to have real relationships with machines, but that's coming.
Right.
And so this relationship arc is the thing that keeps pulling me, the similarities like, oh, this thing is about relationships. And so anyways, that's the commonality.
Huh.
It's so fun. I love that you said, you're 25 years into it and you're still learning. It reminds me of this Neil deGrasse Tyson quote where he said, as the area of my knowledge increases, so too is the perimeter of my ignorance.
I mean, how smart is
where
deGrasse Tyson?
And one of the smartest dudes in the world. And he's like, I still don't know anything.
Yeah, right. I know. Right. Matter of fact, it's getting scarier of how little I actually know. Yeah. Is it the Dunning-Kruger effect or the principle?
Yep.
Yeah. It's a good principle
it's a very good
to take a look at. Yeah.
But as far as the first rule of mastery, what'd you learn about yourself writing this book? Because I think the process of writing a book, because going from a 2 to 3 page story, and was it Harvard Business Review you said, to a 200 page book, it's a whole different animal. What'd you learn about yourself throughout the process?
One is I like trying to get ideas out of my head. Mm-hmm. I think that's it's hard, and I like it. And I'm not very good at writing. So I learned that, I didn't know this, but people that I spend time with are not shy about asking for help. So in elite sport, it's kind of built on like, hey, what'd you see?
Yeah.
There's a purpose, there's a mission that is so bright and clear. And most elite athletes are like, hey, can you show me that thing? Like, is there a way that I could just focus a little bit better? Or like, what is that confidence thing? Like, how do I master confidence?
Right.
And so it's not I've got it all buttoned up. I'm never going to show that I don't know, unless it's maybe a competitor, sort of thing. Yeah. But like, there's a wanting to get better, so they ask for help. And so I needed help to write. And so I'm so stoked that, Kevin Lake, who's a great writer, helped to do that. So that's one, like that felt really good. Mm-hmm. The second is the editor, when I sent the first manuscript, he sent it back and he's like, you're nowhere in this. So I don't like to start sentences with I. I don't like to say I in any sentences really, because nobody does it alone. And he's like, right, I understand. Like, the Zen parable that you're working from, Mike, like we're all interconnected. Wonderful. But this is bad English. Who is the we?
Right.
Is it the mouse in your pocket type of thing? Like, who's the we? Like, you need to explain this. And so it was the hardest part was sharing the parts of me that were honest in my experience of the fear that I would feel throughout my life about being judged or critiqued and not being good enough in the eyes of others. Mm. And so putting myself in there in that way was actually harder than I thought. And so that was another one. And the other one is there's a lot of good science that supports this idea of FOPO being one of the greatest constrictors of one's potential, but it hadn't been collated. It hadn't been pulled together. Is collated the right word? Curated. It hadn't been curated properly. Yeah. Go Trojans.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I don't know if we're doing the best promo of the Trojans right now.
The two of us, I know. Actually, let me come back to that piece. It's like, I wish I would have figured out how to stick with it. I wish that my story that I would have shared with you is that I got frustrated and irritated, and I figured out somehow a way to stay in it just a little bit longer, because I feel like we could have worked it out.
Yeah.
And I left too early.
Well, the setter in the room ended up becoming the best setter in the world.
Yeah, how about that?
He was interested in something.
He was interested in something, just not me. That's very clear.
But I wonder if you leaving had an effect.
I don't know.
Well, it's also kids, right? Maybe they had a fear of your opinion. If you thought their question would be stupid.
I know. I just wish I was I wish I was a little bit more like the reclining dragon. Like I'm more of a reclining dragon now than I am like breathing fire everywhere I go.
Right.
Like I know I can breathe fire, and I know I can snort just a little bit of warmth, and just kind of give and I was all fire breathing. Like I didn't have the range or the dimension that I wish I would have had, and so I didn't get to finish.
I don't remember my friend who, I think it was Madison McKibben, who told me, like, that was the first time I heard your name. I don't remember him saying that part of the story. Yeah. He was actually intrigued. He was like, this guy came on, he told us about how he worked with the mind of this guy who jumped out of space, and I was like, oh, that sounds dope.
Yeah.
And then I think I found your podcast from there.
So it kind of worked.
It worked.
Yeah, that's fun. Yeah. Now I feel better.
Yeah. Now we're here full circle.
There we go.
Right, full circle.
I remember when I first saw the title of your book, it kind of felt, might be the wrong word, but like surface for you, because I'm like, oh, this guy knows he's so deep into this mastery path, and I was like, fear of people's opinion, I feel like that's not that big of a problem for me, and so I wasn't as excited as I thought I would be about reading it, and as I dove in, I was like, oh really? I get it.
Yeah.
now I see why he thinks he's right. I definitely, just for other people, that's how it kind of came off at first, where I was like, oh, I think maybe he's trying to be a little more basic for the general public. I don't know why that's what popped into my head. But now I'm convinced. I'm like, holy shit, this is definitely present all the time.
I didn't tell my peers and my friends really that I was writing a book. And I think I would rather do something than talk about doing something. Even though talking about doing something can create some sort of pressure to get it done. So and nobody does it alone. So I fundamentally need a tribe to kick my ass and love me up, and and so I can do the same with them too. And at the same time, I didn't talk to my colleagues about it, and some of them who know me really well, and they're like, "That's not the book. They just looked at the title. They're like, that's not the book I expected from you. What do you mean? People's opinions is the thing.
Just open it, bro.
Yeah, right. You just open it. Yeah. And so then it was an accident, but I framed it this way. I said, listen, if this was the first rule of health, and I said, stop drinking poison, and they go, yeah, that's it.
Right.
If I'm drinking poison every day, the first rule would be to put the poison down.
Right.
And I think this is the poison that I was sipping on.
Yeah.
And I think most of us are sipping on, because our brain is supposed to find the danger.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's the dictum of the brain. Scan the world and find the danger. Mm-hmm. Are we next to a cliff? Is there a snake out there? Is that person over there a friend or foe? And the real danger in modern times is, am I being accepted?
Right.
And so, and it's heightened with all of social media and this, that, and the other. But
well, I was gonna say too, I feel like adolescence is the most heightened part of that in our lives. Usually, what kid doesn't care about the opinions of the others in his high school or whatever at a young age? I feel like we start with caring a lot about other people's opinions, and as we grow up and gain the knowledge and tools, then we're able to break out of it.
I think.
Maybe.
That's what I think. I don't know if I didn't do the work with a psychologist on this stuff for me, and I don't think I would have done the work unless my wife was like, hey, you got to go get some shit together here. This was 2012. Wait, hold on, 2002. And she's like, we need to do some work together if we're going to stay married. And I was like, holy shit. I go, no, we got this. She's like, you've said that before? There's a longer story there that we could do a part two. But so if I wouldn't have done the work, then I think I wouldn't have known this, how constricting it is. And Our brain is just trying to figure it out, and safety is the dictum, and belonging and being accepted by other people is a big driver for us. So I'm stoked that you didn't like it at first. And then found to appreciate it.
Didn't like it. It's not my words. Yeah, right. Hey, simple is usually much better for me in terms of reading.
That's so good.
Well, well, thank you for writing the book.
Oh, thanks, mate.
I think it's a hugely important book, especially right now, because you mentioned that if we had a tribe of 3, it would have been decently important back then. But I think now everyone on some level is famous with Instagram,
I love
social
your thinking
media
here. Yeah,
and we get feedback all the time, and we're wondering. You put a picture out on Facebook or Instagram, you're constantly wondering, well, how many likes is that going to get? What is that feedback going to be? So I think that it's a hugely important book, and you mentioned that maybe we can dive into a part 2 later. I know that we're running out of time here.
That'd be great. I'd love it.
But thanks for having us on.
Wait, before we go,
I
would love to hear both of your guys' shaping or definition, if it were so formal, of mastery. When you think of mastery, how do you articulate it? Because you guys are definitely on the path.
I think for me, what it comes down to, my basic rule of thumb is, what am I getting? What really excites me? And am I doing that thing? And I've just followed that since I moved to California in September of 2015. And it's resulted in me living a life I would have never dreamed of. And so that's just my one basic rule of thumb. And I just keep sort of chasing that.
That is awesome.
It's been fun.
And so we didn't open this part in the book up about like know your first principles. So that's a first principle for you.
Yeah.
And can you say it one more time? Like, how did you articulate that?
When I wake up, I look at the things that excite me.
Yeah.
And I just try to keep doing those things.
What about the things that like are mundane, boring, very dull, but are required to live the quote unquote good life?
I think so. I get really excited about the mundane stuff because that's what's required to be really good at the stuff.
Oh, so you stitch those together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
because a lot of people would look at me going on a morning walk or reading or meditating as somewhat mundane things.
Yeah.
But I love that stuff.
And you've got a daily internal practice. Meditation in particular.
Yeah, I do. Try to do 5 minutes of box breathing in the morning. And I keep a running list of things that are sort of batting 1,000 in my life, where surfing, getting in cold water, going on a walk with my son at sunset, going on a walk with my wife at sunrise, and just all these things. And then writing, podcasting with this guy. Just like, if it excites me, and if it's led to like every time I do it, it ends up being a good day, I just try to do those things.
You make it sound so simple. That's so good. Yeah, get that down in writing, please. Yeah, the second rule. Make it really simple.
We'll work on the second rule together.
That's great. I love it. Yeah, how about for you?
What's the question specifically again?
How do you articulate, if you were to be so bold to say I have a definition of mastery, but like how do you articulate what mastery is?
Yeah, I think for me it starts with authenticity, because I realized like the things that make me happier, I'm basically trying to chase like things that fulfill me, like whatever I think is going to leave me at the end of my life, looking back and being like, yeah, we're good on all that stuff. Like it wasn't about what you achieved during that time, it was how you did it, and were you trying to do the right things and leave the world a better place and all that stuff. And I noticed over the years that me being authentic and like really having a good idea of who I am and then basing my actions off of that has made me just like a better person in the world. I feel like I'm contributing in a better way. And then the success tends to, like, I'm being more successful because I'm being like that.
I know.
Like,
yeah,
it's so like the more you give, the more you get kind of thing. The more you push someone ahead, the more they look back and grab you and pull you up kind of thing. And you're like, oh, I wasn't trying to get successful or rich, but like it keeps happening. So I'm like, I'm going to lean into this one and just keep trying to like snowball all that and surround yourself by people that kind of are on that same path as you. And then, I don't know, now I'm like listening, I'm in a podcast with the guy whose podcast I listen to all the time, and I'm always in your podcast being like, oh, I wonder what I wonder what I would say in Gervais' podcast, or like how would I react to that or answer that question? And now I'm sitting here staring at you in your studio. It's like, I don't know, but I'm going to lean into all this.
Did you read that that's the good life, or like you've organically sorted that path out?
I've experienced it, I think.
It's so clear.
Interesting.
It is so clear what both of you described. And I love the simplicity of how you just made it very clear, which is like, look, I just realize if I have these sets of ways that I go through life, that it just really works.
Right.
And it's not about achievement, it's more about purpose.
Yeah.
And that is awesome, dude. Like, I love, like, you guys are a great team. Like a really good, I see why it works.
You developed 7 years of team chemistry.
I like to hear that because I just made him my coach. So I'm really challenging this relationship.
Yeah. I had a world-class action sport athlete, and his mom was also a legit manager, like managed uber talent. And I said, hey, how come you're not, your mom's not managing you? And he said, oh, I don't want to fire my mom. Okay, so then I share that with you guys. Like, so how are you going to navigate the hard conversations when there's so much kind of interconnected? Like, have you had that conversation?
So, a little bit. I mentioned it, and it's been huge in my mind because I've even noticed that something I want to back off on is kind of micromanaging my team because we hire our coach. I put the whole thing together, and I was just like thinking, I don't want our relationship to change in terms of our business, and like having to even hang out with him too much can be a problem,
Yeah.
But then I just kept coming back to like, I think I can trust this guy to like just be honest with me. He can trust me to be honest with him, and we can get through whatever, comes up. If he's annoying me, I'm annoying. Of course my coach is going to annoy me.
Yeah,
like that's happened. You're going to say the wrong things.
Yeah.
But like, I think this guy is a good enough listener. First of all, like just listening to me, so you know what I'm feeling, and then basing your actions and words off that. I think that's going to get us through, and that's why I'm able to commit to it. I'm like, I think he can listen well enough, and if I can listen, and we can just be real about it, we'll be all right. But like that's hard, and you can't do that with everyone, especially like your siblings or like, I don't like mixing pleasure and business, friendship.
Yeah, so
but we'll see.
It's on. Yeah, that's cool.
And I think it
sounds like the right mechanisms, though.
Yeah, I think it's helpful that we have the same interests at heart. We both want him to have as much success as possible, and so if I don't think I'm doing the best job possible, I'm going to seek help. Say, hey, like this is what I'm seeing. Try struggle with. I can't get through to him, and it's so funny to call Nick Lucena our assistant coach.
Yeah,
he's a legend.
But I can call Nick and say, hey, Nick, here's the film. Here's what's happening. What do you think? What do you think would be a better way to get to try? And I think we have so much respect for each other. We've been friends and business partners for 7 years, where it is almost this sort of sibling relationship where I know sort of where to push him because he likes trash talk and he likes competition. And I'm comfortable enough with him where when I see him get lazy on a dig, I can say, you need to clean that one up. And he knows it. And I just need to remind him and just make it audible. And then I think he likes being challenged. And we have good communication with each other, which was something that was sort of lacking.
One of the things that you guys might find some value in this, I did it with a national team, is just going through the exercise, how do you want to be coached? And that's for both of you independently. Say, this is how I like to be coached. Public, fast, or no, pull me aside. Like I want it quiet and thoughtful. And look, you might think that I can handle it, but I just need a little bit of like hand. Or it's like, no, get straight to it. Don't beat around the bush. I want to. And so just having that conversation, because both of you are going to coach each other. We like to think that just the coach coaches the athlete, but the athlete also coaches the coach, and on communication and style and ways to look at things. And hopefully the athletes make the coach better and the coach makes the athlete better. And having some of those conversations like, okay, how are we going to do hard conversations? And have you heard of pre-mortem? The pre-mortem exercise? So post-mortem is like after a death, you
right.
go through it, right? So pre-mortem is if the worst thing were to take place.
Mm-hmm.
But we're doing it we're doing it now. But let's imagine worst case scenario. And, you know, somebody who's read The Secret or some of that other mumbo jumbo cosmic bullshit, sorry, you know, would say, no, you can't think about those things because they might happen. It's not how this works. But if you have a conversation about the worst shit that could take place and you're doing it in advance, you say, right, if that were, okay, we're agreeing that's pretty bad? Yeah, that's pretty bad. Okay, what are the series of things that would take place prior to for that disaster to take place?
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And so it's a pre-mortem exercise. And then you can start checking those things off and working them instead of leaving them up to chance, like sleep or hard conversations, or you don't tell me the truth, or I'm afraid that you're not going to or you're going to fire me, or that there's money on a bonus on the line and I don't want to screw up. Whatever the weird stuff that can come up is, and you knock those down in honest conversations and even practice them, I think it's a really powerful process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
And even just how do you want to be coached? Because I've coached clinics in lower level, but just even that question, I wouldn't even have thought to ask that. And so I just that's a huge takeaway.
Oh, cool, man.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I will tell you.
Yeah. You will tell. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then when it gets fiery, you can also know that maybe he doesn't want to be barked at because then he goes into a shell, or maybe he needs to be barked at for him to realize that, oh, this is important.
Yeah.
But you just figure that mechanism out, and then it also gives you another tool, which is like, hey, you know how we talked about wanting to be coached? This ain't it.
Mm-hmm.
Got you.
Right.
You know, it just sends another, like, oh, we've done this work.
Yeah.
I'm missing.
Yeah.
Or I didn't understand it this way. Okay, cool.
Mm.
All right, but I need you to understand something right now. Okay? And it is.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's just dimensional in that way that everything is very personal. That thought that business is not, everything is personal because everything has a relationship to it. And if you can work well with the relationship ahead of time by treating it with dignity, because it's going to get to the messy edge.
Right. Yeah.
And I think we have a competitive advantage when we do it that way.
I like that.
I agree. And so if this is our last year doing the podcast, you'll know how bad it went.
Yeah. Don't do that. It's so good. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Come on.
Yeah. But I'm excited. Great. Yeah. Good things ahead. And thanks again so much for the time, for having us on. It's always such a treat to chat with you.
This is great. Yeah. I appreciate you guys.
And the great thing is that this is the first rule of mastery, so you left the door open for a couple other books.
Sneaky guy.
I know, right? Yeah. Sequels? I know. Yeah. Appreciate you guys.
Awesome, Doc. Thank you.
Thanks, man. Let's get in the water one day, maybe.
I would like
that.
That
might be fun.
That would be great.
All right.
Yeah.
I mean, if I get invited to one of those 3 Kelly Slater wave pool sessions you've been to, I won't be mad.
I would like to go surfing. That'd be fun.
That's me plugging myself in. No. Right on. Thanks, Mike.
Cool.